This happened in 2002. At the time, I was 22 and I had lived with a friend of mine I had known since high school. We were really close, and I had always been under the assumption that nothing would ever ruin our friendship. Boy, was I wrong. It was around May when Tara, my roommate, brought her new boyfriend, we'll call him Alan, home for me to meet. At first, Alan seemed like a nice guy. I never got any bad vibes from him, and he seemed to be really good with her, and he seemed to be a really good person. One night, about a month after meeting Alan, Tara said she had to go into work because someone had called off. Alan was there, and we had been planning on watching a movie, all three of us. Alan decided to stay after Tara left, so we went and sat on the couch and watched a movie. About an hour into the movie, Alan started scooting closer to me. I didn't notice at first, but then he got up next to me and put his arm right behind me. I asked him what the hell he was doing, and he responded with, "Oh, come on, you know what I'm doing." I jumped up off the couch, grabbed my keys and purse, and walked out of the front door after calling him a pig. I drove to my parents' house and told my mom exactly what happened. Mom told me that Tara might not believe me. I didn't understand why. My mom explained to me that men could be master manipulators, which I've been proven time and time again, which I knew already. I just couldn't imagine her not believing me because we had been friends for so long, and considering I had never lied to her before, why wouldn't she believe me? Tara called me on her break. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous as hell when I received that phone call, thanks to what my mom said. I answered the phone, and then Tara started screaming at me, calling me a liar, telling me I was a boyfriend stealer. Apparently, she had called Alan before me, and he told her that we had made love because I talked him into it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and the fact that she believed it frustrated me even more. I stayed with my parents for a few more days and decided to go back. I had only talked to Tara once since our phone call that night, and she told me she was moving out on the 1st, which was about a week away. I had a camcorder that I had gotten for Christmas a few years prior, so I decided I would try to hide it and go over there and try to get it on record that it was him that was hitting on me. Also, I wanted him to admit that we had never had sex. That night, I went back. Neither one of them were there. I put my camcorder in the vent right below the ceiling in the living room. Where I had it, it captured the whole living room. I had a remote to it so I wouldn't have to manually turn it on. I felt funny about doing this though. What if she thinks it's a setup, and Al and I set the camera to throw her off? I'm a naturally paranoid person, so these are normal questions for me. The next day I went over there knowing Tara would be at work. I knocked on the door and Alan answered it. As soon as he let me in, I turned on the camera. I actually heard a beep, which thankfully he didn't notice. And like clockwork, the first thing he said after shutting the door behind us was, "So, I'm sorry about the other night. I was just high and didn't mean to hit on you." In my mind, I think he is full of crap because he told Tara we were sleeping together. "Why did you do it? You know Tara and I are best friends. Also, I don't see you like that at all," I said. "I like you and really want to be with you. You can't tell by the way I look at you. Also, I want to break up with Tara, but only if you agree to be with me." He said all of this and then some, and I didn't even know how to respond. So I turned around without saying anything and walked to the door, only to be stopped by him pushing the door shut. "I say all of that and you're just going to walk out without responding?" he yelled. He was getting more angry, and I'm not going to lie, he was starting to scare me. "Listen, Alan, I'm not attracted to you in the least. I don't like you like that. And let me be clear, even if I did feel that way about you, I wouldn't do anything about it because my friendship with Tara means more to me than any guy. He didn't respond, he just walked away from the door. Then I bolted, walking as fast as I could to my car. As soon as I got to my parents' house, I texted Tara and told her to get the video camera down when he wasn't around. 2 days later, she called me and apologized for everything. It took a while to get back to where we were, but eventually we did. We're still best friends, and her husband, and kids live right next door to me. The only advice I can give is never believe your partner over your best friend. That is, if your best friend is actually trustworthy. Hey everyone, long-time lurker, first-time poster here. I had this experience a month ago now, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Really curious to hear what you think might have been going on. I, a mid-20s woman, was traveling solo through Europe for the month of March. I had the most incredible time and overall felt extremely safe. There was just one encounter that felt so bizarre and honestly scary. It was around 10 a.m. in a mid-sized city in Germany on a Sunday. I had just checked out of my hotel and was walking through the city center with my backpack on my way to the train station. Lots of people around waiting for the tram and walking. Super safe area. I noticed a woman standing in the middle of the street where the tram tracks were. She was wearing a backpack on her front, but not like a traveler's backpack, a smaller one. This is Harper. I want to note she's probably talking about a fanny pack. She looked maybe early 40s, wasn't disheveled, looked clean, was dressed appropriately for the weather, etc. Soon after I passed her, I heard her calling out in German, and soon realized she was calling out to me. She was clearly not in distress or asking for help. She wanted to make conversation, and with many folks, I've been totally down for that. But something about this person was instantly not sitting right with me. I ignored her at first, but she would not stop. So as I kept walking, I said, "Sorry, I don't speak German." In hindsight, this was stupid, and later in my trip I wouldn't have done it. But I was still getting used to all of this. "Oh, you want to speak American?" she said. "We can speak American." I ignored her, but soon became aware that she had started following me. I picked up my pace and ducked into a crowded bakery, thinking either she wouldn't see or at least I'd be around other people in a contained space. I ordered, but before I even sat, I saw her come in and order something too. I was pretty freaked out at this point. I sat down and put in my earbuds and opened a book, not actually listening to or reading anything, but hoping it would keep her from talking to me. Nope. She came over and sat at my table. I tried to ignore her, but again she was relentless, waving at me and smiling. I don't know how to describe her smile. It was like, just really forced and unnatural, if you know what I mean. Like she was putting on some kind of act. I asked what she needed, and she told me she'd seen me walking and thought I looked like I needed some compassion. I told her no. I was good, everything was fine, but thanks, trying to be as appeasing as possible while still making disinterest clear. She just kept smiling at me and asked if I had money and a place to stay. I told her yes, I was fine. She started talking about various things, people she'd met on trains, dance classes, etc. Her English was not great, so I didn't really understand a lot of it. But suffice it to say, these were all completely random topics. The really strange thing, though, is that I didn't get the impression that she had a mental illness or any kind of neurodivergence that would explain a conversation like this. It felt like she was trying to think of ways just to keep talking to me. Like, at times, I could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to come up with something, anything else to say. This went on for probably 5 minutes. Finally, she offered to move to her own table. I said yes, that would be great if she could. She sat at the one closest to me, but even then tried to get my attention and talk to me. She finally sort of stopped, but still kept looking back at me and pulling out her smartphone to text someone. Also, she never once touched the massive slice of cake that she had bought at this bakery. There was one man, a fellow customer, sitting nearby who looked sympathetic to me and kept glancing over like he was suspicious of this woman, what was going on. But I don't think he spoke English, so he couldn't really understand, and it's not like I could explain it to him, as I don't speak German. My heart was racing. Finally, I decided I needed to get out of there. I kept checking Google Maps to see when the next tram would arrive. There was a stop almost right outside, and once it was just a minute away, I slipped out of the bakery while the woman was looking down at her phone and ran onto the tram. I watched the doors the whole time to make sure she didn't follow me on, and didn't stop looking behind me until I was safe at the train station. I haven't been able to stop thinking about this, and I don't know what to make of it. I met tons of outgoing people in Europe, people much more direct and sociable than Americans, but no one else ever made me feel the way this woman did. Something about the whole situation, following me, buying something that she never ate just so she could come into the bakery, looking back at me, texting someone, just felt so off. I believe I have pretty good instincts when it comes to people, and this person just didn't feel right from the beginning. I can't help but be afraid that she saw me with my backpack, quite obviously a tourist, and was planning on doing something to this naive and vulnerable American. I guess I'll never know, but I'm curious to hear if any of you have ideas, or if I'm just totally misreading a harmless situation. Thanks so much for reading. Okay, so I want to preface this by saying this is my first time visiting this sub, and my writing skills are mid at best. I learned about this subreddit from a YouTuber who made a video on best Reddit subreddits, and my first thought was to make this post because I genuinely still can't believe this happened to me. This happened in 2013, when I was around 12 years old. My mom moved me and my siblings in with my grandparents because we did not have enough money for rent at the time, and she needed to save. It wasn't a big deal though. They had plenty of room, and I got to spend a lot of time jewelry making with my grandma, which in my little eyes was such a win that I didn't even realize we were poor. It was our little pastime after school, and one of my favorite parts was the trips we would make to Michael's to get the beads and materials occasionally. Michael's, for those who are unfamiliar, is a craft store similar to Hobby Lobby, and walking around it is a little girl's dream when it comes to DIY stuff. One day in late fall, we realized we had run out of wire for a bracelet I was making for my mom, so we headed to our local Michael's to get more. This particular day was in winter, so it had already begun to get dark by 5 p.m. My grandma, having vision problems and a bad hip, entrusted little me to run in and grab the wire and pay for it, as we had done so many times together before. I was stubbornly independent, so she wasn't very worried about me. She parked right in the handicap spot in front of the store. The sun setting and the light from the big storefront windows illuminated her car behind me as I walked inside. As I was standing by the display at the front entrance by some Christmas decor or something, a man walked in through the sliding glass doors. I noticed him immediately. It was hard not to. He was tall, I think. I may have just been short. maybe in his late 30s with dark hair and wearing all black from head to toe. His clothes were a bit dirty, and I distinctly remember a big red D1 logo on his hoodie. He had his hands shoved into his pockets and walked briskly into the store, almost frantically. I just watched him. He made eye contact with me for a bit too long and then continued deeper into the store. I was immediately weirded out, but thought nothing else of it and went off to find the wire. That's when I noticed he started to follow me. Aisle to aisle, I would be browsing and he would just appear at one end, fake looking at stuff. He was muttering to himself constantly. You know when someone says something out loud expecting a response, but they aren't really directly looking at you, like that? As a kid, you don't really realize what's happening immediately, so I just awkwardly walked away from him each time, pretending not to notice him. In my little brain, I reasoned that he wasn't following me and walked all the way across the store to the wedding aisle to look at some stuff I had seen when I first walked in. I figured there'd be no way he'd follow me there, but sure enough, while looking at the invitation cards, I get a spine-chilling feeling. I turn around and there he is, right behind me, back to me, doing something, messing with something in his pants, doing something really vile to himself. I had never seen anything like that, and the sunken eyes he looked at me with still haunt me to this day. It took me a minute to process what I had just seen, but once I did, I immediately booked it out of the store as fast as I could. Jumping into my grandma's car, she seemed startled by my sudden appearance and asked what I got. I tried to explain what had just happened when I saw him appear in the sliding door in front of us, and the dread I felt in that moment was indescribable. He approached her car, obviously recognizing I was with my grandma, and knocked on her window. I hadn't been able to explain myself in time before she cracked the window and asked him if everything was okay. The man gestured to me with the same crazy stare and said something along the lines of, "She's a thief. She stole from there." I was mortified. He was trying to make her suspect of me, on top of everything else he had just put me through. Thankfully, my grandma got the same vibes I did because she politely told him to back away and rolled the window up while locking the doors. He yanked at her door handle, then swung both his arms up and started banging down hard on the car's roof, causing us both to jump and me to start crying. My grandma slammed on the reverse and peeled out of there. I've never seen her drive so fast. I don't remember much after that, just the crying and holding a $17 spool of wire in my hand that I had not paid for. We called the police as soon as we got home, and luckily they immediately took it very seriously and requested the videotapes from the Michaels. A few weeks later, my grandma told me that they had found him. They mostly left me out of the investigation, besides taking my statement as to not traumatize me further, I guess. She got the dent in her car fixed as well. It wasn't until a few years later that my mom finally told me what had happened to him. It turns out he already had one battery charge and 2 sexual assaults on his record, one even being from a minor relative of his, like his niece or something. He had just gotten off work from the gas station across the street when he must have seen me walk into Michael's alone. I don't know what would have happened if my grandma hadn't locked her door, or if she had been in there with me, vulnerable to that man as well. So, scary freak from Michael's, let's please not ever meet again.